Nobody becomes a monster in a single decision. It happens in 100 small ones, each of them completely reasonable, each of them justified, until one day the warmth is just gone, and you don't even remember where you left it. That's not a description of someone evil. That's a description of someone who learned how the world works and never asked what it was costing them along the way. And if you've spent any time learning about power, about manipulation, about why good people lose, the description is probably the thing you're most afraid of becoming. This episode is the answer to that fear. Not reassurance, an actual answer. Let's start with something almost nobody talks about when they hand you the tools of power. Machiavelli was not interested in producing monsters. He was not writing a manual for sociopaths. He was writing for ordinary people who kept getting destroyed by a world that didn't care about their intentions, only their outcomes. The reason people misread him is the same reason people misread everything dangerous. They take the tools and ignore the purpose. They extract the chapter on force and forget the chapter on why excess force eventually brings you down. That distinction matters, because before I give you a framework that actually works, I need to show you the two ways people go wrong when they start using what they've learned, because both of them are real, and both of them will ruin you in completely different ways. Trap 1. Staying weak on purpose. This is the first trap, and it's the one nobody warns you about, because it doesn't look dangerous from the outside. You've learned how manipulation works. You can see it in real time now. You understand why good people lose, how social camouflage operates, why the world keeps rewarding people who probably shouldn't be rewarded. You have the map, and you do nothing with it. Not because you forgot, not because you weren't paying attention, but because using what you know feels too close to becoming one of them, so you make a quiet decision, usually without naming it, to go back to being agreeable, to keep absorbing, to keep hoping that eventually people will notice how much you've been giving and decide to reciprocate. I want you to hear this clearly. That is not virtue. That is fear wearing virtue's clothes. Real virtue is a choice you make from strength. When you can say no and you choose yes, that's generosity. When you can set a boundary and you choose patience, that's grace. But when you have no other option and you tell yourself you're being kind, you're not making a moral choice. You're just describing your situation and calling it character. The first trap is staying unprotected on purpose, because the alternative feels dangerous. It will cost you everything, slowly, in ways that keep feeling like bad luck until the day you realize they weren't. Trap 2. Winning without a reason. The second trap is the one the opening of this episode was describing, and it's the one people warn you about more, but rarely explain from the inside, which is why so many people fall into it anyway. You start using what you know, and it works. People stop walking over you. You start winning situations you used to lose. You stop absorbing things you don't have to absorb. It feels right. It feels like finally. So you keep going, and at some point, not dramatically, not in a single moment you can point to, you stop asking whether something is necessary and start asking only whether it works. You use a tactic that wasn't really called for because it was available. You create a small advantage that didn't actually matter because you could. And somewhere in that drift, without any single decision you can call the wrong one, you become someone who treats people as instruments. Not because you're evil, not because you planned it, but because you forgot to keep asking one question. That question is coming. Hold it for now. So here is the actual framework. Not balance. Because balance is what people say when they haven't thought carefully enough about the problem. What I'm giving you is something precise. Principle 1. Separate perception from behavior. Seeing clearly is not the same as acting on everything you see. This single discipline removes roughly 80% of the danger in everything that came before this episode. You can recognize that someone is testing you without retaliating. You can see manipulation in real time without playing the game back. You can know with complete certainty what someone is doing and simply choose not to participate. Recognition is information. It is not an instruction. Most people who drift into the second trap didn't do it because they saw too much. They did it because they conflated perception with obligation. They assumed that once you can see the game, you have to play it. You don't. You can watch a chess match without picking up a piece. When you notice something, pause before you act. Ask whether acting serves something real or whether it just serves the fact that you noticed. Noticing is not a reason to respond. It is information. Use it like information, carefully, selectively, only when it actually matters. Principle 2. Proportion is everything. Machiavelli's prince uses force, but never more than the situation requires. This wasn't sentiment. It was strategy. Excess force creates enemies you didn't need to make, and it costs you something internally every single time you use more power than the situation actually called for, whether or not you feel it in the moment. Most people calibrate their response to their emotional state instead of to the actual size of the threat. Someone tests a boundary and they burn the relationship down. Someone disappoints them and they respond with the level of force appropriate for an active betrayal. That asymmetry between what actually happened and how you responded is what turns protection into aggression. And once you've made that turn, even once, something shifts in how you see yourself. Match the response to the threat, not to how the threat made you feel. Hold the boundary when someone tests it. Withdraw when withdrawal is appropriate. But don't escalate past what the situation demands. Proportion is the line between protecting yourself and becoming something that other people will eventually need to protect themselves from. If this video helped you, subscribing helps us keep making more like it. Thank you for the support. Principle 3. There is a layer that is never negotiable. Every person who has used power well over years, not just for one winning moment, but across a lifetime of decisions, shares one trait. There is a private self that doesn't get compromised, regardless of what the public situation requires. Not a performance of integrity. Not a rule they follow when someone is watching. An actual internal layer that strategy never touches. You can negotiate hard and still go home and be genuinely present with the people you love. You can hold firm at work and still be the person your friend calls at midnight. You can refuse to be used and still choose freely to give. The tactics live in the outer layer. They are tools for navigating the world as it is. But the inner layer, who you are when no one is testing you, what you value when nothing is at stake, that layer is off the table. Permanently. Not because keeping it protected makes you weak. Because the moment strategy bleeds into that inner layer, you haven't become Machiavellian, you've become empty. And those are not the same thing. Remember the opening of this episode, the warmth that slowly disappears. That's not what happens when you get strong. That's what happens when you let the outer layer eat the inner one. Protect the inner layer, not as an aspiration, as a boundary. Principle 4. Judge yourself by what you protect, not by what you win. This is the question I said was coming. This is the one that tells you, with almost no room for self-deception, which side of the line you're on. After using any of these tools, after setting a boundary, holding firm, refusing to absorb something you didn't have to, ask yourself one thing. Did this protect something real? Or did this just prove I could win? If the honest answer is protection, your time, your dignity, your family, your work, something that actually matters to you, you're fine. Power used in service of protection rarely corrodes the person using it. But if the honest answer is that you just wanted to win, that winning felt good, that you wanted them to know you could, that's the early signal, not a crisis. An early signal, and early signals are the only ones you can actually do something about before they become the pattern that describes you. Check it regularly. Because the people who end up where the opening of this episode described, the ones who one day realize the warmth is just gone, they didn't get there in one decision. They got there by stopping the question. So here is what actually changes, starting now. You're not becoming someone who manipulates people. You're becoming someone who can no longer be manipulated without noticing, and who chooses deliberately when and whether to respond. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming someone whose warmth is no longer mistaken for an open door. You're not losing your soul. You're finally putting it somewhere safe enough that the world can stop taking pieces of it. That was always the actual goal, not to hand you tactics and release you a little more dangerous than before, but to turn you into someone who can no longer be ruled by people who never deserved that kind of power over you in the first place. The world doesn't reward naivety, and it doesn't reward cruelty. Not for long, not in any way that leaves the person intact. It rewards people who see clearly, act proportionally, protect something real underneath all of it, and never stop asking what they're doing it for. It was never about becoming Machiavelli. It was about becoming someone Machiavelli couldn't have used. This closes the Machiavelli series. But the question this episode just opened, why some people keep attracting these dynamics in the first place, no matter how much they learn, points at something deeper than tactics can reach. There is a part of you that operates underneath conscious awareness, a part that shapes who you let close, what patterns you keep recreating, why certain wounds refuse to fully heal no matter how clearly you understand them. Carl Jung spent his entire life mapping that territory, and that's exactly where we're going next. Subscribe so you're there when we open that door.